Today, I am announcing that we have established the Transparency and Accountability Project. You will hear me refer to it as TAP. TAP will identify, investigate, and, if appropriate, pursue accountability for potential unlawful behavior by federal agents in Hennepin County. It is staffed by prosecutors and a civilian investigator from our office. As part of this project, we are actively investigating 17 incidents that have been brought to our attention by the community. As you can imagine, many of the victims and witnesses have legitimate concerns about being publicly identified for fear of retaliation by the federal government. For that reason, we will not share information on all of the incidents we are investigating. There are a few, however, that are very public and for which we would like additional information. We are asking for the public's help in gathering additional information on these incidents. Customs and Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino and other agents using force against observers and press near Mueller Park. That happened on January 21st of 2026 at about 2 p.m. ICE CBP usage of force against staff and students at Roosevelt High School. That happened on January 7th of 2026 at approximately 3:30 p.m. As you know, we created a portal to collect evidence in the shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. The portal has served its purpose and has been taken down. Thank you to everyone who contributed information to that portal. We are now opening a new portal for community members to share photos and video on any incidents that may involve potentially unlawful conduct by federal agents. Through our new submission form, and you can see the QR code there, community members can also describe incidents they experienced or witnesses, even if they do not have photos or videos to share. There are many victims whose stories need to be told. We will investigate and pursue charging where appropriate, and we will continue to seek collaboration with local law enforcement wherever needed. I want to be clear with our community about the challenges these investigations entail. Because the federal government has refused to provide us information about the actions of their officers in Minnesota, we may not be able to learn, for example, the identity of masked agents. Additionally, bringing charges against a federal agent involves complex legal analysis. Once filed in state court, any federal agent charged can try to move the case to federal court. Federal agents can also try to rely on supremacy clause immunity. But I've said this repeatedly, and I want to be clear. There is no absolute immunity for federal agents. And we must be fully prepared to litigate these issues before filing a charge in state court. Make no mistake, we are not afraid of the legal fight, and we are committed to doing this correctly. Operation Metro Surge caused immeasurable harm to our community. Our immigrant neighbors have shown incredible bravery and resilience. Our broader community showed incredible courage, protecting neighbors, engaging in mutual aid, and documenting all that happened. Our community deserves transparency and accountability. TAP is a critical part of our effort to ensure that happens. Thank you. Questions? Jeff.
In closing the other portals for the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, can you just discuss the reason behind that and where those investigations stand today?
Yes. Question was about enclosing the portals for Preddy and Good. What does that signify, and where are we in terms of those investigations? So we received over 1,000 submissions, and it's simply, as I said, run its course. We feel pretty good about the idea that we've probably gotten everything that's out there at the moment, and the BCA is following up on that. In terms of where we are in those investigations, as you also know, we have demanded in TUI letters information from the federal government regarding 3 investigations, Preddy, Good, and also Julio Sosa Solis. We have demanded that information be given to us tomorrow. So we are expecting to hear a response from the federal government tomorrow.
Are you able to make a charging decision with the evidence that you gathered from the portal, but without the ballistics and other forensic evidence that the feds have?
So the question is, are we able to make a charging decision with the information from the portal without the ballistics and other evidence that the federal government took? So it isn't just evidence from the portal. The BCA has been interviewing people who were witnesses to this. I've mentioned before, we also have the medical examiner's reports. That, I think, ultimately may be more important than ballistics. I've said this repeatedly. We know how everybody died. And it really, I think the medical examiner's report may ultimately be much more important than what type of gun was used. We'll know how many shots are fired, what trajectories those came from. So I do feel confident that we will be able to make charging decisions in those cases. I can't say when that will happen, but I feel very confident that we will be able to make those decisions.
When it comes to this new portal, you say you're already investigating 17 incidents that have been brought to your attention, including one involving, Greg Rubino, former commander at large.
Yes.
Can you just give any kind of insight into what that looks like right now when you say that these are actively being investigated? Is this like the very initial phase of that? Is it just little crumbs of information that have come to you, or do you feel like you have robust reasons for kind of getting into these at this point?
So the question is about the 17 instances that we are investigating. How robust have those, or what are we doing on those? So as I've said, we have a civilian investigator assigned. We have lawyers from our office. We, by the way, are not getting any additional staffing on this. This reflects our values. It reflects the concerns of our community, wanting accountability and transparency. And it reflects the values of the people in our office who very much want to look into these situations for their community as well. So I would say where we are on many of them is identifying them and identifying what we would need at this point, who we would need to interview, what kind of records we would need from law enforcement, and that sort of thing. So there's been a great deal of work behind the scenes to identify the evidence that we need moving forward.
When you talk about,
You-
when you talk about a longer timeline,
Yes.
Can you give more context of, what that exactly might look like?
So you're asking me about when I give a timeline in terms of potential charging decisions?
Yeah, talking about kind of the challenges with that and how it's a longer timeline.
It's a longer timeline. So if we were talking about deadly use of force by a Minnesota peace officer, we would have an investigation by the BCA on each of those cases. They would hand us the investigation and we would be applying state law to it. As part of that investigation, we could subpoena records from the state. And for instance, we would never have an issue trying to identify who the people actually were that were involved. So we know that the federal government is not giving us any information whatsoever. And so that is a potential barrier. We have made requests as we are required. Remember, I said we can't subpoena information the way we can of a state agency. You can only make a demand of a federal agency to get that information. We've done that. So we're being very methodical and meticulous about going through the correct legal process to get the information that we would like to have. And that there are a lot of unknowns there. But at the same time, the BCA and our office continues to investigate, continues to get information, continues to get reports as to what happened here. And so I can't talk about a definite timeline, but the delays in part are because of the lack of federal cooperation. Also, it just takes time. It takes time to gather all of the evidence that you would want to have. I know people, because I've heard this often too, hey, you have the video, what more do you need? Well, we need a lot of factual information, but I will say legally, another step here is if we filed charges, as I said, the case would be removed to federal court. There would be a request to do that. That's not what we normally do. We operate here in state court. And so we have to be prepared, should we file charges, for what will happen next. And the first part of that is, what are the arguments against removing it to federal court? And I've said before that we, even if it got removed to federal court, we would be prosecuting the case. Federal procedural law, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but the state law still applies, but we would be in federal court in front of judges that we don't normally practice in front of. The other issue there is, although there is no absolute immunity, and I want to keep emphasizing that, a federal officer can try to convince a court that he or she is entitled to supremacy clause immunity. That's kind of a complex legal argument that we would have to be prepared to litigate should we file federal charges. So those pieces of this are in addition to what we're normally doing, which is a meticulous, thorough investigation with the BCA.
Mark, if you do, and I know we're still in the land of hypotheticals here, bring charges against any of these agents, likely removed to federal court, would you expect the federal government to obstruct any kind of investigation or any attempt to bring them in and arrest them and go through the normal procedure that you would do with any other criminal defendant?
So the question is, should we charge in federal court? Do we expect the federal government to obstruct us? I would say they're already doing that. They are, to my understanding, not even doing a federal investigation into the shooting of Renee Good, which is fairly astounding given the fact that you would expect in any deadly use of force, no matter how you thought about what it looked from video, you would do a use of force investigation and then arrive at a conclusion as to what happened. But we know they're not doing that. We know that the BCA had been in conversation with the FBI about getting information in the Preddy case. Those conversations went on for a while until the administration sent somebody here from the administration and then said, no, we're not going to cooperate, we're not going to give you anything. And so our view of it is that they are obstructing. They continue to do that. We hope that by tomorrow we do get a response from them giving us the information we've asked for. But if they don't, that's another indication that they are obstructing our ability to gather all of the information that we need or that we want to have to make decisions in this case. And let me be clear, if I were one of the federal agents, I would want that information. I would want any entity that was considering whether charges are appropriate to have that information too. And if I'm the public, if I'm the government, I would want transparency. It is not helpful for the government to say, well, these people were domestic terrorists or something like that, when people know that wasn't true, right? What the public wants is a transparent, thorough investigation, an announcement of what is appropriate, charges or not, and the reasoning behind it. That is the only way the public can be expected to respect a decision and that they can either agree with or disagree with, but at least they know why it was made. Last question?
If you do not hear from them tomorrow, do you have any other tools at your disposal to fulfill what you're looking for from them?
Yes, if we don't hear from them by tomorrow, we're certainly prepared to file a lawsuit to get that information.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.